Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Ammon Brown here with Workmate. And without further ado, we would love if you can introduce yourself and your company.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Andy. My name is Ammon Brown. I'm the head of growth here at Workmate. Previously, I've held a variety of different roles across companies like Google, Frame.io was one of them, and probably notably was a company called X.AI before it became the AI company that it is now. It was a scheduling company. And so this is kind of my second go around with that because Workmate is also a scheduling company. It operates as essentially an administrative assistant that you can just CC on an email and say, hey, go schedule this meeting for me, and it handles it from there. In essence, that's what it is. There's a lot more moving parts under the hood, but that's what you can expect as an outcome.
Very cool. Yeah, we'd love to learn more about what else your platform can do. And would you say a lot of people think AI assistants are just glorified reminders, but what's the biggest mindset shift there that people should consider, and where are these things really going?
It's really, the mind shift is that a lot of AI right now and agents and all of these things are kind of single player mode, where it's my little agent and it is just reminding me and providing me with things. But when you go into a multiplayer mode where you're saying, hey, reach out to this other person, and now this other person is interacting with my AI, it becomes an order of magnitude more complex, first of all, but also it has a much higher bar for quality. And so that makes it a little bit trickier to run something like this. And that's kind of the next level of differentiation, because you can accomplish a lot with Claude and Claude Code and other agents, but when you want them to reach out to someone else, you really need to trust that agent.
Yep. And yeah, we'd love to learn more about your guys' feature set. So it kind of acts as like an executive assistant, right? Can it do more than scheduling, or?
Yeah. Currently, we've kept it pretty narrowly focused on scheduling because we wanted to really nail that use case and make sure that what we've built is just really good at checking your calendar, understanding what you meant. It pulls in a whole bunch of different preferences and other things like that. We're slowly expanding it, giving it new capabilities so that it can check your calendar if you want it to. It can also do web research and some of these other things that other types of agents can do, because it's almost getting trivial to add those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. The real complexity, like I said, kind of comes when you're doing the multiplayer scheduling.
Oh, yeah, I like that you guys establish a beachhead to kind of get the product out there with a very important use case that people come across on a daily basis, really. So I guess, why has scheduling historically been such a hard problem to solve? And is that the reason why you guys started going about tackling it, just because it was such a common issue?
Yeah, it's really because it's a pain point that people either have or they don't. And it's very salient. It's easy for people to understand. Like, yes, I try to schedule meetings and it takes me a long time, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and it's a time suck, and it's a context shift all the time. And so when you say, hey, I have a thing that'll schedule meetings for you, people understand that right away. It's also a uniquely simple yet tricky type of problem to solve, because you say, yeah, sure, just check my calendar, check their calendar, and do it. Mm-hmm. Well, no, there's a lot of other, subtle preferences and certain ways that people like their meetings, even down to the title and what they put in the notes. People are very persnickety about their calendar. It really represents how they spend their life. And so you need something that's flexible enough to fit anybody's scheduling system, but also powerful enough to understand when it's talking to someone else, how to negotiate those things.
Yep. And so can your AI be relatively proactive, or is it more of like reactive, like you tell it what to do, or can it do some of the thinking on its own to, understand the context that, this guy would like to have a meeting, and then automatically go through the booking process from there?
So it can make suggestions like that. It doesn't read all of your email. It sees the emails that you send to it, just like an assistant would, but it's not directly connected to your email. But it can pick up context and other types of clues, and it can be proactive about reaching out to you and saying, hey, you've got these couple of meetings. I reached out to these people a couple of times. I haven't heard back. What do you want me to do? And it'll do that over Slack or SMS or others, and sort of have that back and forth with you around those scheduling challenges that it might have run into. And like just this morning, it proactively reached out to me on Slack and said, never heard back from these three, and these other two are still pending. What do you want me to do with those? And I was like, just go ahead and stop following up and maybe try to reschedule this other one, and off it goes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of the a lot of the email inboxes now have these notifications to kind of remind you to follow up with people or continue a thread.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful because a lot of those discussions just kind of fall off because you get busy on a project or you hit the weekend or what have you. You know, it gets a couple days in between the last communication, and it's easy for those meetings to fall through the cracks.
Yeah. Well, I'm profoundly lazy. So if it suggests that I reach out to someone, I just say, well, why didn't you just reach out for me? Why do I have to do a couple of keystrokes? I joke, but it's kind of like that where like the shift from an AI assistant to an agent is really it's able to do things. And that's really what we've been building. It's able to actually interact with your calendar and schedule something on your calendar and execute the task rather than just suggest to you how to execute the task. So it takes the entire cognitive load off of you rather than just suggesting new things to add to your cognitive load.
Yep. Yeah, we could always use more of that in a world where there's just an explosion of things trying to draw your attention away.
Yeah, exactly. There's a flood of information out there, and so the things that are able to give you more focus are the things that are going to win. And that's one of our theses, is that we can help you manage your time in a way that in the scheduling process, like I said, you're not jumping around and context switching and going, oh, I never heard back from that guy, let me jump back over here and send that email. But it's also helping you protect your calendar and defend that focus time so that you actually have the time that you need to get things done. I have my Workmate set to try to schedule meetings back to back, primarily on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so that I have a lot of focus time on Mondays and Fridays.
Yep. Yeah, I end up doing that manually myself, but yeah, I like to have days where I have a bunch of meetings and then I have like my work blocks throughout the day as well, so I could actually get real work done. Because sometimes you can go through an entire day and just realize you've been in 15 meetings and haven't got anything done.
And there's nuance to that because I have a focus block on my calendar, and if there's an important meeting, I'm going to schedule over that. Now, any other scheduling system that's just looking at your calendar, it's not really going to understand the difference between a board meeting that cannot be moved and a focus block that can be moved, or something on my calendar that is a block, but it's a dentist appointment. I really shouldn't move that, but it's just me. And so when you're able to pull all of this together into the context of a good agent, it's able to sort of make those decisions for you and say, hey, you've got this focus block over here. Everyone else is only available at that time. I think I can move that. And it'll check with you to make sure. But those are the types of decisions that a good agent is able to make.
That's really, really interesting. I guess, what are the biggest time leaks that founders or executives have throughout their day that AI can effectively, replace or remove?
I mean, a lot of it is just those menial tasks, things like scheduling. And like I said, that's one of the reasons that we chose scheduling as the big problem to go solve, because it is a problem. Like I can have an AI draft a bunch of emails for me, but they're never going to sound quite like me. And now I have to go back and edit, and I can have an AI summarize all the world's information for me, but it's going to be a big chunk of text I have to read. But for scheduling, if I can develop the trust with it to just say, take this task and go, and then it just pops up on my calendar and all I have to do is show up, that saves a lot of time for that. The scheduling ping pong is one thing, but for me anyway, it's more when I go back into my email, I go, oh shoot, they haven't replied yet. Now I got to do this. And it sort of pulls you out of your work stream when someone texts you back and says, I can't do Thursday. You're like, oh shoot, now I have to jump out of what I was doing and deal with this.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Context switching is such a major issue for people. It's, like we were mentioning earlier, it comes down to focus. So if you're going to work on a task, make sure that you block out some time to really just, heavily invest into it and actually get it done the right way. But if you're switching between inbox to calendar to various other, Slack notifications coming in, you find yourself really distracted throughout the day, and, you waste a lot of time in between, not just time, but like also that cognitive load of like switching tasks or like go to something new and try to recalibrate yourself to like, okay, what was this context for this conversation? Where was this guy saying he could meet or not meet, and then trying to plan around that, it gets really distracting.
Yeah, exactly. And especially for things that are time sensitive, you can't not jump out of what you're doing and deal with it. If it's for a meeting tomorrow and somebody who's very hard to get a hold of just replied, yeah, you kind of need to deal with that. And so you can have an agent intercept that response and get back to them much faster than you would be able to. And it just does that in the background.
Yep. And so how do you ensure that the AI communicates with the same tone of professionalism as, say you or whoever this EA is working for, essentially?
It learns over time. So we have what we call training mode, which you can say, hey, I need a meeting with Andy, go do it. And it'll come back to me and say, hey, here's what I'm going to send to Andy. How does that look? And I can tell it, that's way too formal. My voice is much more casual, or all of these things. And it'll start to understand the way that you like to word things. Within reason, it's not going to, just turn into a goofy, silly bot that yells at people. But it will sort of govern its tone a little bit to match the way that you like to communicate.
Nice. Yeah, won't all of a sudden start developing a sense of humor and start joking with your clients.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm okay with that because why not? That sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I might program it that way.
A lot of our customers, they like the fact that it feels very human. Yep. And they like the fact that when it speaks, it's formal and professional, and that's sort of what most people like about it.
Can you essentially determine the difference between a human executive assistant and this tool now, or I guess what do you say the nuances are between the balance between like having a human executive assistant versus this? Like, what are the trade-offs you think?
One of the trade-offs is speed. A human executive assistant probably won't get back to someone as fast as an agent can.
Yep.
A human executive assistant is always going to be better at sort of understanding certain relationships and offline context, from prior conversations and just having learned the executive for whom they work. But agents are very good at understanding most everything that it needs. So you can give it you can give it free form instructions. You can give it code words and things like that, like you can with a human assistant. So if I say, hey, when I say ASAP, that means like within the next day. If you can't get it done, don't bother. Yep. Or I can say sometime soon. And when I say that, kick them out to next week because I don't care that much.
Yep.
And so you can replicate a lot of those behaviors, but what we're trying to do is make it so you can build a rapport with the agent the same way that you would with a human assistant.
Very interesting. And what's that engagement look like with the with Workmate? Is it very clear for the end user that they're communicating with an AI, or can they tell the difference really?
Not always, and most of the time, people really don't know. Which, as head of growth, I don't love that because someone isn't going to go poach someone else's assistant, but they will adopt the software that they're using. And so you can change its name. You can give it an email address on your own domain, and you can treat it like a human. And most people are not going to know that they're communicating with a bot. What tends to happen is that our customers like to say, "Hey, that's my bot," and get a little bit of cool points out of that. But our free version, it's a little bit more like a bot, and it is named Workmate at workmate.com and those sorts of things. But yeah, it's really up to the user. If they want it to feel very bot-like, it can. If they want it to be very human and pretend that they've got a much bigger team than they do, we can do that.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good inherent PLG strategy, having, the free version where people are effectively advertising the product as they use it.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's as a PLG guy, I like to be able to put the product in front of people, but you have to do that very carefully because, a scheduling workflow is sacrosanct in some ways where people want to protect that and they don't want us marketing to the guests in their meeting. And so just a small mention or a signature line or something like that is usually enough just to have people go, Oh, that was a bot. Cool.
I want to learn more about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as marketing people, it's always easy when the product sells itself, and you can build in those viral loops into it, where people as they interact with the product will learn about it and want to try it out themselves.
Yeah, and scheduling is uniquely inherently viral.
Yep.
It's really useless if it's just me using it. There's necessarily a counterparty, and so we have the opportunity to get exposure to them. What we find is if if my customer's guest in the meeting has a really good experience, not only are they more likely to sign up with us, but our customer they're going to talk to our customer, and they're more likely to stay put, to not churn. And so when we focus on making sure that the guest experience is very good, we tend to do a little bit better.
Yep, that's a good point. So I guess, yeah, handing over your calendar is a big trust leap at the end of the day. How do you design for the control, giving the control to the end user so they feel comfortable turning over the keys to their calendar without, automating too aggressively out of the gate?
Yeah, and it's Google's permissions are read only or keys to the kingdom,
Hmm.
and so we need keys to the kingdom because we have to be able to add events to your calendar. Um, but there's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, there's the standard security check boxes that you check off. But I think that there's a comfort level that people have nowadays with allowing other tools and systems to authenticate into their calendar. Our system maintains the least, basically minimum viable data, so it's only going to pull what it needs to understand. And we have mechanisms that allow you to just expose free busy only. It doesn't work as well if it doesn't know that this busy block is focus time and this busy block is something else. But for the most part, I think people are comfortable giving a little bit of access in exchange for a whole lot of time savings, and that's what we found. It hasn't been a huge impediment.
Yep. Is there any risk that people would associate with AI having access to your calendar or anything? Like, is there any, like, maybe if they're not even real risks, but just perceived risks that people might have?
Yeah, I mean, our AI is calling a set of tools that we built, and those tools are things like read the calendar, schedule a meeting. We don't have a tool that says delete this calendar or anything like that, and so it's really pretty low risk. The biggest risk, people perceive that there's a risk of just throwing open the doors and letting an AI manage everything, but the truth is that there's a ton of guardrails, and the AI is making decisions here, and then it's going through that set of tools that limit it to a certain set of capabilities. And so that's almost like a built-in guardrail against any blowing up your calendar. People trust things like Calendly. People trust other tools like that.
Yep. Yeah. So that could prevent assistant drift, so to speak, where it's just kind of running around doing its own thing. So you could kind of layer into it. You could add more controls or take away controls, even if as you get more comfortable with using it.
Yeah, and that's where our training mode comes in as well, where you can have it checking in with you. Hey, this person replied. Is it okay if I do this? And you say, yeah, go ahead and schedule it. Things like that. And so you can insert yourself into the workflow in a way that isn't taking up as much time, but it's giving you that comfort level and that level of trust, especially early on, where that mode, it doesn't just let you tweak how the AI sounds, it starts building trust with the user. So they go, oh, okay, this thing isn't running hog wild through my calendar. It's actually doing exactly what it's intended to do.
Interesting. And as somebody fully embraces this AI assistant, how much leverage can they realistically look to get during a week, an average week, or how much time do you think they could save per month just by using this tool?
I mean, it's easily a couple hours a week.
Wow.
For heavy schedulers, some of our heaviest users are scheduling 30, 40 meetings a week and just blocking their calendars nonstop. And so, if you estimate 10 to 15 minutes per meeting of just multiple times, the more people in a given meeting, the more loops it's going to take you. Mm-hmm. When you're herding cats like that, it can be a significant time saving.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good call. How do you guys compare or compete, I guess, with Calendly? How do you guys see your competitive difference to them?
I don't really think that we're direct competitors with Calendly. You know, we do have booking links that are similar to theirs, probably not up to feature parity, but good enough. The thing is with Calendly, that's kind of a different use case. The way I think of that is if I send you a Calendly link, I'm basically saying, here, you do the work. I don't care if you schedule it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. It feels
Right?
like a thing of the past.
Well, a thing of the past, but also a thing that serves a certain purpose, which
Yep.
is here, book it if you want. I don't care.
Yep.
But there's other meetings that are a little bit more important. You need to make sure you follow up with them, because if I send you a Calendly link and you don't do anything,
Yep.
I need to follow up with you if I really need that meeting. And so the agent handling those follow-ups and managing that and making sure that it gets on the calendar is a big one. But also, if you have 3 people at 3 different companies that you need to meet with, say a real estate closing or something like that, Calendly is going to fall flat because it's really good for that one-on-one external use case. But it doesn't really do it when you have any degree of complexity with scheduling.
Yeah, and especially when you're doing like large scale, like we'll do like outbound campaigns, and pretty much, as the marketing person, we're dealing with a lot of scheduling and inbounds and stuff like that. So if we're using a Calendly, we just drop the link to them. It's really hard to keep track of all those and keep following up on every lead that you have, whether they have booked a meeting or didn't book a meeting. So effectively, your tool would be good at that too, where it could do the follow up and just ensure that meeting actually closes.
Yeah, exactly. You loop it in, and then you have a dashboard that shows the progress of each task, what emails have been sent, what actions have been taken, and like I said, it'll Slack you or send you an SMS and just say, "Hey, I never heard back on this one. What do you want me to do?"
Good point. So I guess what happens when everyone in the organization is using one of these assistants? Do you think the productivity compounds, or does it get a little complex sometimes when it's just a bunch of bots like talking back and forth with each other?
It actually the productivity gains compound because what we do is if everyone's in the same organization, or even we have what we call the scheduling network, I can add people to my network. I could add you to it. You're in an external organization. But if you're also using Workmate, that negotiation is kind of instantaneous. And it works that way for internal meetings as well, because I already know every calendar for every person involved in this meeting. I already know all of their preferences. I already know all of these. And it can just immediately do that negotiation internally and schedule the meeting. So I can send an email to 3, 4, 5 colleagues and say, or even send a Slack and say, hey, Workmate, we need to meet. And they don't have to say anything. It's just going to show up. I don't have to open a calendar. I don't have to look at mutuals, any of that. It just does it.
That's really effective. So I guess what does pricing look like? Who do you find typically using your platform? Is it great for SMBs? Do you find large enterprise customers using it as well? Or
it's interesting because it really varies. Within a given, say within a large enterprise, a lot of times we'll get small pockets using Workmate because the people that feel the scheduling pain are not necessarily internally facing engineers. It's usually external facing HR, sales, operations, those sorts of things. And so we get a lot of independent freelancers that like to use it. We get a lot of consultants and those sorts of things. But then we also get adoption from larger teams that want to do exactly what I just said, which is allow them to instantaneously schedule every meeting internally the way everyone prefers. And so as you get more teammates onto the system, it gets smarter and faster. We've priced it kind of close to the high end of SaaS. So starts at around $45 a month and scales up to $145 if you do monthly on our premium plan. But we also do flat rate site licenses, which is almost like hiring the AI to work for the entire team.
Wow.
And in that case, typically an individual user is going to look at that and say, well, I'm going to compare that to this SaaS tool that I use for very little money, whereas an enterprise is going to compare that to hiring 2 or 3 full-time people to handle this.
Yep.
And the math makes a lot of sense when you look at how much time you can save across it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess today's scheduling, what are some of the features that you guys have coming down the roadmap that you could share? Of course, don't get in trouble by the CEO, but so today you're kind of managing calendars, but where are you guys taking this product in terms of like making it like a full blown executive assistant where it could also manage priorities and do a little bit more complex tasks?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that an executive assistant will do that our system is starting to do things like that. For instance, first thing in the morning, it'll send you, hey, here's what's upcoming on the agenda. But like you said, things like task management, that might not be represented on your calendar, but it can be represented by an agent very simply. Say, hey, here's the order that I think you should handle these priorities in. There's other things like booking travel, managing sort of, like you said,
Yep.
a lot of AI agents now are just kind of reminders, but reminders have value.
Yep.
If it nudges you and says, hey, your cousin's birthday is coming up. Do you want me to go grab something that they might like? And then come back to you and say, hey, should I buy this? You click, say yes. So, an assistant will do a lot of those things that we want to kind of expand it to be able to manage a lot of things that, it's just mundane tasks that you need to get done.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff in work that nobody likes to do, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
And we want to focus on the more productive things or, the things we like to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so, now the agents and the tools have gotten powerful enough and our ability to build them has advanced to the point that we can have an AI not just tell us what to do, but actually do it for us. And that's where a lot of the industry is going, and that's where we see ourselves going as well.
Do you eventually see everybody's work being automated? Like, is one day it's just going to be bots all talking to each other, doing all the work for us?
I mean, that's what Reddit is at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, exactly. Yeah, that's why I don't go on there.
I mean, when I say my people should talk to your people, it's like, well, my agent should talk to your agent, and it can get done instantaneously. I am trying to automate large swaths of my own job, and I'm trying to just have a constellation of agents surfacing the most important things that I need to do, and figuring out how to make that less of a management headache where you're managing agents and more of a simple, easily delegate a task, get a result, move on. That's where we want to go, because I've been playing around with a lot of other agents and such, and teaching them takes a little bit too long. So, parceling out discrete tasks like scheduling is a much more effective way to go about it, I think.
Yeah. So I guess where can people learn more about Workmate and pick up your product today?
Workmate.com.
Workmate.com. You see right there. That's workmate.com. Very nice.
Yeah. You can do our enterprise plan for 2 weeks. No obligation, no credit card needed. Just jump on, try it out. It's pretty straightforward. And then from there, if you want to keep going, then you can just jump onto a paid plan. Super simple.
It sounds after 2 weeks, I'd probably be hooked. I could probably use this myself.
We sure hope so.
Awesome. Well, Ammon, I know we're both in New York, so we'll definitely have to meet up here in person one time. But I appreciate you coming on today, and looking forward to continuing to work with you guys. And that's workmate.com if you guys want to check out the product. You could also find it in NachoNacho's B2B SaaS and AI marketplace. We have the best brands with some great deals on it. So feel free to check it out today.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Ammon.